Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out another colorless Eldrazi ramp deck, but now we finally get to play with Emrakul, the Aeons Torn, the biggest and baddest creature in Magic, and of course I'm going to be running it as my commander today. This 15 mana 15/15 has flying and protection from spells that are one or more colors, as well as Annihilator 6, so when it attacks our opponent has to sacrifice 6 of their permanents, and then Emrakul is uncounterable, and when we cast it we also get to take an additional turn, so we immediately get to make use of that Annihilator trigger to annihilate the opponent's board. Now of course 15 mana is pretty steep even compared to some of the other Eldrazi titans, but despite not having access to the typical green ramp spells, as a colorless deck we still get to run a ton of ramp artifacts. So if we take a look at our deck breakdown, the biggest portion of the deck are ramp cards. Starting around turn 2 we can already start ramping. There's some good 4 and 5 mana ramp artifacts, and then even some more expensive ones. Then we've got some additional card draw engines, because pairing card draw with extra mana is usually a good recipe, so we can find additional ramp spells and get up to 15 mana in the first place. Some of these are also planeswalkers that can offer a bit of interaction. Then we've got our smaller Eldrazi cards, and then of course I've also left a whole category for the various Eldrazi titans, now also including the Ulamog, which we didn't have on Arena yet, so we're just missing out on one Kozilek to complete all 9 Eldrazi titans that exist. And then the mana base of a colorless deck is also one of its strengths, as we get to run a ton of these utility lands that provide value when they enter, or maybe have some other ability. And I've split them up into 2 categories here as well. We've got the lands on the left, which are the more important ones in my opinion, often providing value when they already enter the battlefield, so we don't need to invest any additional mana into them to maybe scry or surveil or gain some life. And then there's also a few of these lands that can produce 2 mana under some circumstances, so those are also key in getting to 15 mana for Emrakul. And then we've got some additional utility lands, and if you don't have the wild cards to craft the lands on the right, you don't need to worry about it. The ones on the left are a lot more important. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration. Mox Opal's pretty good in a deck full of artifacts, as we can enable Metalcraft pretty quickly to generate an extra mana. Then at 2 mana there's Coldsteel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mindstone. I'm even playing Ornithopter of Paradise, Solar Transformer, and the Ironcrag. Sadly can't play any Signets in a colorless deck, and even Arcane Signet doesn't make colorless mana, so that's a bit of a nombo. We do have a Burnished Heart, which we can play, hopefully immediately sacrifice to search up 2 of our basic wastes, so those are also important in the mana base. And then we've got some of the 3 mana artifacts, some better than others. Mana Geode lets us scry 1 at least, can maybe loot with a terminal. Relic can eventually gain 3 and draw a card. Then the Palladium Mirror, of course, as a creature is more vulnerable, but can untap and make 2 mana for us, so that's similar to the Worn Power Stone, which is not a creature, so that's usually preferable. Then there's Pristine Talisman, gaining 1 life whenever we tap it. Sculpting Steel can copy an artifact that's in play, potentially a more powerful one as well. And then a Skyclave Relic can maybe be kicked to make additional mana for us. There's the Celestus, can switch between day and night to improve our hand, gain some life. Unstable Obelisk can also double up as removal for 7 mana. Then there's the Urza's Incubator, discounting our Eldrazi by 2 mana. Just need to be careful in the mirror match, as it will also affect the opponent's creatures. And then at 4 mana there's Hedron Archive. The Ring can also tap for double colorless, can immediately cast another spell afterwards with that mana, which is pretty good. The Obelisk is the only alchemy card I'm running, but for as long as we don't have Thran Dynamo on Arena, I don't feel too bad running this instead. Basically just another 4 mana ramp artifact making double colorless. Don't really need to worry too much about the second ability. Then there's Forsaken Monument, which is one of the most important cards in the deck. Even have a way to tutor it up, as this will essentially double our mana, as our lands that are typically colorless will make an additional colorless mana, and any of our artifacts that tap for a colorless also make an additional mana, and that's why I'm prioritizing artifacts in the deck that tap for a colorless, as opposed to artifacts that tap for a mana of any color, since those are not a combo with a monument. Then Gilded Lotus simply taps for 3 colored mana, but can also maybe tap it right away to keep on ramping. There's the Eternity Elevator, which is a colorless version of Gilded Lotus, can also maybe station it all the way to make even more mana for us. And then Ultima in creature form is pretty similar to the Forsaken Monument, doubling the mana from our lands. And then the Dreamstone Hedron can also tap for triple colorless right away. Then our card draw effects include Maze Mind Tome, can also simply tap it to scry one a few times, but can also pay 2 mana to draw, similar to the Reckoner Bankbuster, which eventually makes a pilot token which can help crew the Bankbuster itself. We've got Moonsilver Key, and that's the tutor I was talking about, as this can search up whatever artifact we want that produces mana, so that can also get our Forsaken Monument, which may be a little bit counterintuitive, but that does work, and that's often what we'll search up. Then we've got our treasure map, which can scry a few times, eventually flip into a treasure cove, making some treasures, so that can also give us a nice mana boost, or we can use it as card draw with a treasure cove. There's a Warping Whale as my only piece of interaction, at least cheap interaction in this deck, so this can deal with opposing creatures that have power or toughness 1 or less, can also counter sorcery spells, or make a Scion token at instant speed that can be sacrificed for a colorless mana. The One Ring doesn't need an introduction, another very powerful card draw engine. Karn can provide some Karn advantage with the +1 and -1, or make a Karnstruct token with a -2. There's Mystic Forge to cast our colorless spells off the top of the deck, so that's another awesome value engine. The Might Stone and Weak Stone can be used as removal, but can also just draw 2 and then still taps for double colorless that we can use to activate abilities or cast our artifact spells. And then we've got our 2 Ugin Planeswalkers, the ineffable discounting our colorless spells by 2, can also destroy things with a -3 or make some spirit tokens. And then Ugin Eye of the Storms is also incredibly powerful if we can get it down, as our deck is full of colorless spells that can trigger the passive ability, also triggers when we cast it, removing opposing permanents that are 1 or more colors, can draw cards but can also generate mana. And then our cheaper Eldrazi cards include Herald, which will discount our expensive colorless spells. There's a Fleshraker, making spawn tokens whenever we cast a colorless spell, pinging the opponent in the process. Thought-Knot Seer gives us a bit of hand disruption attached to a 4/4 creature. The Vestige is good to warp first, so we get to maybe trigger the ability, put an extra permanent in play, can be a land or even a spell if we have lots of lands in play already. Then there's the Echoes of Eternity, which doubles any trigger from our colorless spells, as well as simply making a token copy of any colorless spell we cast, so that can also be a lot of fun. There's the Devourer of Destiny, great to have in your opening hand to smooth things out, but also fine to cast for 7 mana, exiling an opposing permanent. We've got the Sire of 7 Deaths, a 7/7 with 7 different keywords that's good at stabilizing us against aggro. We've got the Breaker of Creation, can also gain a ton of life back as it counts our lands as colorless permanents, and then also has Annihilator 2, so a smaller version of Emrakul. And then Coast LLC command has lots of different modes, can also ramp us by making spawn tokens, can use it as removal, or can also exile graveyards, so it can do a lot of different things. And then our Eldrazi Titans, starting with Kozilek, the Broken Reality, which will often manifest a few cards from our hand, drawing cards in the process, pumping up our colorless creatures. There's Kozilek, the Great Distortion, which can refill our hand, and then we can discard spells to use them as counter spells. There's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, exiling 2 permanents when we cast it, and then a 10/10 Indestructible that can mill the opponent. We've got Ulamog, the Defiler, which will exile half of the opponent's library, and then has a lot of Annihilator based on the opponent's most expensive spells we've exiled. And then we finally have access to Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, the original Ulamog, 11 mana, 10/10. When we cast it, destroy target permanent, has Indestructible and Annihilator 4. And then we've got the remaining Emrakuls, the World Anew, stealing all of the opponent's creatures when we cast it, 12/12 with flying, protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. And finally Emrakul, the Promised End, a 13/13, flying trample, protection from instants, and when we cast it we get to take the opponent's next turn, controlling all of their actions, and then they will get an additional turn on top of that, but also incredibly fun if we can pull it off. And then quickly going over some of the more important lands. Of course, Ancient Tomb, tapping for double colorless at the cost of 2 life, can give us a nice start. We also have the Eldrazi Temple, tapping for 2 colorless mana to cast our Eldrazi spells, so that's also perfect in this deck. And Ugin's Labyrinth can maybe imprint one of our expensive spells, so that it can also tap for double colorless, can later still get the imprinted card back into our hand if needed. And then we've got plenty of lands that provide value when they enter the battlefield. Adventure's Inn, as well as a Radiant Fountain gaining 2. Inventor's Fair can consistently gain 1 life with enough artifact, can also sacrifice it to search up an artifact, so that will often find our Forsaken Monument as the more important one. We've got plenty of lands that can either scry one or surveil one when they enter, looking at pylons, and there's a bunch more of these. We also have Cavern of Souls, of course, naming Eldrazi to make our Eldrazi uncounterable. Can be incredibly useful against counterspell decks. And then Urza's Cave can also search up whatever land we need in certain matchups. Sanctum of Ugin, if we cast an expensive Eldrazi, we can sacrifice it to find another one, so that can give us some much needed redundancy. So you can kind of see here which ones I prioritize. But for now, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Elanor, so kind of a food token ramp deck. Our hand is missing something to pitch to the Labyrinth. Have some 3-mana ramp into an Echoes. So if we can maybe scry into a big Eldrazi early on, this hand's pretty decent. If not, it feels too slow. I think this is a winnable matchup if we just draw kind of an average hand, so I don't need to take too many risks. So I'll take a mulligan. This seems better. We've got the Mind Stone on 2, Obelisk, can copy one with a Sculpting Steel. Can expect a turn 1 Elf or Exploration, even better. Play an extra land. So go ahead and play the Mind Stone. And we're just trying to get to 7 mana for Ugin to try and control the board. Opponent might be out of lands in hand already. Charmer to discount their creatures. Never mind, they still had a Boseiju left. And now Haywire Might can blow up my Mind Stone as well. Casting it for free. That's too bad. Can't sack it in response. So that'll set us back. Ancient Tomb helps. So cannot quite go Obelisk into Sculpting Steel, would still be a mana short. So for now we'll just play Obelisk and save ourselves 2 damage. So then I'm 2 turns away from Ugin. And once again I can wait to play Ancient Tomb. Eldrazi Temple isn't bad, so we'll keep that. Can also copy my Darksteel Citadel for what it's worth. Might be a safer investment, as it's indestructible. Take 5. Opponent can sack the food, which will then find them a land. So I can still wait on Ancient Tomb, just play Eldrazi Temple, cast Ugin, try and exile their commander, draw a card.
Heed my counsel. I will mend.
Okay, so next turn we're looking at a Kozilek at the very least. Chromox. Ooh, opponent had some expensive cards in hand, Feasting Troll King, and now a Summon Bahamut with a discount from those Charmers earlier. So, perfect answer to an Ugin. Okay, so next turn I get to destroy something once again. So they could deal with Kozilek. That's not ideal. Can play the Mind Stone and just draw. See what we pick up. And take it from there. Could also destroy Summon Bahamut. Maybe that makes more sense. Sure. And then next turn play Kozilek. The Inner Sun, not a bad leftover. Discovering 5 each turn. Finds a ramp spell. Alright, I mean, this is still doable. Opponent's not pressuring us too much. Just gotta dodge a top-decked Craterhoof Behemoth, pretty much. Always the case against these green decks. Alright, Forsaken Monument, that one's exciting. Can I play it and Kozilek this turn? That would be awesome. So I can Ancient Tomb, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we can. And then our opponent's empty-handed, so they wouldn't be able to manifest anything. Could manifest the Might Stone just to draw a card, sure. And then next turn I should be able to Emrakul pretty easily. My face-down card getting pumped by both Kozilek and the Monument. Opponent just replays Elanor. A Gardner, the last name and not the profession. Opponent discovers, finds a halfling. They needed to hit artifact removal here, which they didn't, and now we get to Emrakul them, and our opponent knows the game's over. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Nicol, Bolas, God-Pharaoh. So ideally we keep a hand with lots of lands and ramp spells. Don't want to draw my expensive cards, since our opponent's eventually going to make us discard them. Although, funnily enough, we could maybe Madness Emrakul. Although, never mind. Nicol, Bolas exiles and doesn't make us discard. Either way, this hand seems keepable, although I don't think my Mirror is going to survive. So then I'm just left with Obelisk and Mind Stone, and an Emrakul that I'm very far from casting. So I actually think we can do better. This seems better. Want to wait to play Burnished Heart when we can immediately sacrifice it, ideally. Can maybe wait a turn on the Surveil. Because if I draw land, I don't need to prioritize another one. Find a Transformer, so now I wouldn't mind drawing another land. Or maybe a 4-mana ramp spell. The Wandering is difficult to turn down. And then can play the Idol, perhaps. Can also pressure opposing Planeswalkers. So then if our opponent taps out, I could resolve the Wandering. Otherwise I could also double 2-drop. But they might actually have a 1-mana counterspell. Grave Expectations. So that's gonna heist my library. Doesn't shuffle my library, luckily. So Wandering's still on top. And Coast seems clear for the Wandering. So that seems worth it. Could just keep ramping. That's also reasonable, just so we can immediately draw with the ring if we play it. And I could also maybe pivot and just play Heart and get more lanes. We'll see. Three mana. We are pretty weak to a Brotherhood's End, dealing with all our artifacts. It's gonna be a Mana Geode. So 1 mana left. That's our Mana Geode, by the way, so the card they stole. So, yeah, Coast is clear for Burnished Heart activate. Could even play Ultima. And then, let's see what's on top first. Another land I can keep. So let's say I play Ultima, then I still have 4 mana left afterwards, so then I can still cast a Wandering, as long as I tap carefully. And then, if Ultima survives, which I don't really expect, we could already cast Emrakul next turn. We would have 10... I guess still a little bit short, since Ultima only affects lands and not artifacts, so it's a bit different from the Monument. But yeah, we would be very close to casting an Emrakul, so Ultima has got to go. Opponent lets us untap, alright, that's surprising. So then, play my lands, can make a bunch of mana. Can maybe start by drawing with the Wandering. Can still cast Archive. Play Burnished Heart. Get a bunch of wastes. And they're gonna counter that one. Fair enough. And Burnished Heart resolves. And attack. Shut off their black mana. And then maybe next turn I get to Emrakul. Cannot be countered. Skydiver, alright, I can steal one of my artifacts. X equals 2, so cannot steal the Wandering. But yeah, that still doesn't answer me casting Emrakul. I guess I can even go for my land. Yeah, just target artifact, and I do have an artifact land here. Goes for the Ornithopter instead. But yeah, if they cannot remove Ultima, I get to cast Emrakul, and our opponent's just gonna concede here, sadly. But yeah, we get to cast it, take an extra turn, and then once we attack Annihilator 6, and counting the opponent's permanents, they don't have many more than 6. So that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Chulane, so banned creature deck. Our hand has Eldrazi Temple, which is nice, but it doesn't help me ramp out a relic, and then we're not really doing much. So we need a slightly different hand to start out. Double Emrakul, at least we can pitch one to the Labyrinth. And then we're not too far from Archive and Lotus, so yeah, I'll try this one. And then the World Anew should be pretty good against a creature deck, so we can get rid of the Promised End. Play Key. Next turn I could sacrifice Key and just get some 2-mana ramp card. Or I can get the Monument, which is the bigger payoff. Yeah, I guess the Monument is fine, since next turn I can play Archive. Opponent with a Giver of Runes can protect from colorless, so that could be relevant in this matchup. Bunch more mana elves, still missing blue mana. So I'll get the Monument here, which has the highest upside if it sticks around. Doubling the mana from our lands and our colorless ramp artifacts. This turn play Archive. And then next turn I can Monument, maybe still play something afterwards. Alright, opponent's got the Charmer. Discounting their creature spells. So far so good. Okay, so cast my Monument. Can play Ironcrag for free, since it makes 2 mana. And then we can still play the Wandering. Won't be taking any damage for next turn. And now at least if they destroy the Monument, we've got more ways to find ramp cards. Our opponent can now finally deploy Chulane, maybe draw a bunch of cards in the same turn. Although that also plays into our Emrakul. Do have to watch out for cards like Craterhoof Behemoth that can end the game out of nowhere. This turn we're safe thanks to the Wandering, but that's definitely a reason to Emrakul them next turn. Even if their board may not look all that threatening. Ooh, Silverback Elder. That card's pretty devastating against us, being able to blow up our artifacts. Do they have a creature left? They don't. Okay, so we'll get to deal with Elder before it blows up a monument here. So that's pretty great. And then we have to do some math, so double tap Q to float all my mana. So we've got 14 at the moment. So Lotus into Emrakul I believe is one short, so we'll draw with the One Ring and then I can still Emrakul. Drew a land, so that's +1 mana basically. So now we should be able to Lotus into Emrakul, which sets up our second Emrakul. The Lotus only makes 3 mana since it's colored. I guess never mind, I actually would have been able to play Lotus into Emrakul to begin with, but I guess drawing into a land wasn't a bad thing, so that worked out. Giver runes can't really stop this, but they can try. And yeah, that's pretty convenient, stealing everything, so now we don't need to worry about the Elder blowing up our artifacts anymore. And then maybe next turn I can Emrakul number 2. They don't even have white mana to cast Chulane. Now they can. 1 mystery card in hand. They got white mana, so don't need to fear a River's Rebuke. Runs out Chulane. Get to untap. And I'm just gonna cast this and hope our opponent doesn't concede. Get to attack with Emrakul, take our extra turn, attack with everyone, Annihilator 6. Trying to go through my turn as quickly as possible. Everything's gone, and that's a lethal attack. Well, that was incredibly satisfying. Thanks to our opponents for sticking around. Okay, we're on the play, facing Sami, so also kind of an artifact deck. Can also go pretty crazy once they get their commander down. My hand's not bad. Can ramp on 2, ramp on 3, 1 ring for card draw, go to finisher, and can maybe wait to scry for now. Alright, now I know I need additional lands. Keep the tomb. Drawing 2 expensive Eldrazi right away is not ideal, but we might have enough ramp to get there. Opponent with a weapons manufacturing. So we'll play the Obelisk first, next turn we can ring, immediately draw. Don't care about any of the additional abilities from Obelisk, I'll just treat it as a 4 mana tap for double colorless. Opponent with a Matrix, draw a card. 2 munitions in play already, which is great for affinity purposes. And draw another Obelisk. So I can play this and then still play ring, draw. Can wait until the opponent's turn, since we've already cast our spells. And played land for a turn. Alright, opponent's gonna gamble here, so they get to tutor up whatever they want, although there's a non-zero chance they'll end up discarding whatever they found. What would you want to tutor up in this spot? Maybe something to give their non-artifact spells improvise with all these munitions. Maybe they tutored for Ancient Tomb. Would also make sense. Demand answers, sack munitions, draw 2. The opponent was forced to target themselves because of the protection from the Wandering, which is why they said oops. They found a land. And now I'll draw. Okay, how much mana do we have total? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're close to Ulamog the Defiler. Can play a Vestige. And Dreamstone Hadron could be alright. If I cast this, I'm not gonna get any value as opposed to warping it. So we can go Celestus into a Warped Vestige. And put in a Desert. So next turn we can play the Defiler, still draw a card. Opponent with her own Flesh Raker. Okay, so not opposed to drawing with the Wandering again. Find a Mox Opal. Can give me a small mana boost. So I can go for the World Anew, but I kind of like just going for the Defiler, and then we still have Warping Whale available for what it's worth. I expect this Ulamog to be pretty large, 6 counters, so a 13/13, Annihilator 6 at the moment. I guess never mind, I cannot cast Warping Whale since I only left myself with artifacts that make colored mana, so I should have tapped differently to leave a colorless land available. Can only counter sorcery spells, so probably not going to be super relevant here. But yeah, now our opponent gets to go off, maybe cast a bunch of artifacts for free. Luckily Ugin cannot exile any of my permanents, since they're all colorless. Would have been a lot better against the different opponents.
My resign will put an end to this conflict.
Ooh, a Cityscape Leveler that can get rid of Ulamog if they can pay the ward. Sacrifice 2 permanents, they could even sack their munitions, which actually will damage me. So Ulamog down. Yeah, I may regret not being able to make an extra Scion token for the extra mana. I guess they did give us a Power Stone, so that can make mana to cast our artifact spells. Take some damage off the Wandering, and draw a land for a turn. So, can I cast the Aeons Torn? I cannot. Still a mana short, I believe. Double tap Q to float all our mana. So it's 15, but one of them is only for casting artifact. So had I made a token end of turn, I would have had enough for Emrakul. Now we've got enough for the other Emrakul, which is still pretty neat. And I can use the opponent's Ugin against them, perhaps. Is that the best I can do? Could also play the World Anew, steal their stuff. And that'll set them back. So can I go... Hadron essentially costs 3, and then I can still play the World Anew. Yeah, maybe that's safer. Because giving them an extra turn is still kinda sketchy. Even though I can maybe exile some of their colored permanents. They can sacrifice their tokens in response. So I don't have that colorless mana available, they didn't, so now I still have Warping Whale up. And then cast this for 0 mana. Thanks to Sami's ability. And now, yeah, we also get the benefit from the affinity. So I can actually cast a 6 mana Emrakul. How about a 3 mana Promised End? That seems worthwhile. And our opponent's gonna scoop it up. Yeah, totally forgot about Sami's ability applying to our Eldrazi as well. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Dina, black-green, usually a life gain combo deck. Our hand's got potential. We even have an artifact land to go with Mox Opal, get to start with Ancient Tomb. So I think that's reason enough to keep. So turn 1, just play the Tome. May want to draw with it a few times, as opposed to just scrying right away. Since we don't have much else going on. But then next turn I get to Metalcraft already, so then I could cast a 4-drop. Opponent's gonna dig up a land. Could have considered playing Mox Opal to play around a discard spell, I suppose. Alright, can still cast a Terminal. And then I'll still be able to draw with Tome afterwards. So we're off to a good start. Gaining 2 makes up for the Ancient Tomb a little bit. Ooh, Wishclaw Talisman, that can eventually find one of their combo pieces. And yeah, that can maybe set up a 2-card combo that wins out of nowhere. My deck is not known for instant speed removal. Can play Fleshraker into Talisman, which is still pretty good. Make a token, and then I could use a token to draw with a Tome. Although we can see if we want to keep it instead. Currently have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. So we're actually very close to casting Ulamog. So I think I keep my spawn token in play. Opponent plays Dina. Make sure to gain a life. Ooh, Ugin's Labyrinth. Of course, if I pitch Ulamog, I don't have an Ulamog to cast. Would be helpful in casting Emrakul. Just double checking the math here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So yeah, we'll just draw with Tome now. Can play the Mirror. And then play Sanctum of Ugin. And hope we don't get combo killed. How close are we to Emrakul? If I were to pitch Ulamog to the Labyrinth. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so 1 mana short. And birds is fine. So for now I'll have to Ulamog, exile Dina, make them replay it, which will slow them down. And Dina gets in for 1. And they could sack another creature. I'll block with a Fleshraker. Is a silly. I mean, a double block would make them lose Dina, so they need to have something here. Alright, fine, I'll take it. Don't think the 1 damage is gonna matter too much. Alright, so can cast Ulamog, keep all my tokens, which sets up Emrakul on the following turn, perhaps. That looks okay. Still need to tap Ancient Tomb. Could also sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin for what it's worth. Possible they can protect Dina, but I think I should also get rid of the Talisman, or I can just get rid of 2 lands. Yeah, I think if we go Dina plus Talisman, we reduce the likelihood of getting comboed out. And then I think I should get something with the Sanctum, because I can always pitch it to the Labyrinth to facilitate Emrakul. And then it doesn't matter too much what I get, as long as it's mana value 7 or greater. So I guess a Promised End is quite fitting. Our opponent did have a Snakeskin Veil, as it turns out, protecting Dina. So yeah, we could still die next turn, if they already had their second combo piece in hand. Gotta hope they don't. I'll just chill with the Flesh Raker, don't need to get in for 2. Exquisite Blood, uh-oh. So whenever I lose life, they gain life. Whenever they gain life, each opponent loses 1. So if they have a land that deals 1 or gains 1, we just die. That happens. And yeah, that's a life gain land, so combo assembled. Alright, maybe I should have ignored Dina and just exiled the land instead, but that's tough. So Dina gains a life, Exquisite Blood triggers, in turn trigger Dina, rinse and repeat. So we were very close here. They needed that life gain land. And sure, we'll go through the motions, shouldn't take too long. If I press Shift plus Enter, it auto passes priority without me having to click each time. Because yeah, clicking this pass turn button's not gonna work. Alright, GG's. A turn away from Emrakul. Would have been pretty fun. And yeah, we had a great start, so can't really complain. Maybe could have scried with a Maze Mind Tome to find something more useful. But there we go, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Bonny, blue-green ramp. Opponents ramping, we're trying to go a little bit bigger than they are. This hand has some decent tools with Ornithopter and Power Stone early. If we can get Ugin down, that can maybe stabilize us. So, don't hate it, although could use more lanes. Karn's pretty good at drawing lanes usually with a +1. Opponent off to a faster start thanks to the Elanor Elves. Shadow Spear is fine. Play Ornithopter. And next turn we could already play Karn, which can then help hit additional land drops, or we can keep on ramping with the Power Stone. Alright, boots for haste, so lots of equipment here. Yeah, I guess Karn's reasonable. If I Power Stone and it resolves next turn with an extra land, I could already cast Ugin, so there is some upside there. Yeah, I guess we go for it. Alright, opponent's gonna counter but give us 2 treasures in return. So I'll keep those to cast my Ugin regardless. And can exile the Cavalier. Although I guess still have a land potentially to equip Cavalier, but nope. Because yeah, it does enter untapped, but they only found Hedge Maze. They could have grabbed Prismatic Vista to immediately suit up the boots, but I'm not going to complain. So I'll scry, I'll land on top. I don't need to prioritize anymore. Cast Ugin, exile Cavalier, make mana, play Obelisk, exile the Elves. And then they might struggle to make a hasty Bonny.
I grant you a boon.
The extra mana will also help us get to Emrakul. Right, Cyclonic Rift bounces Ugin. Maybe, well, they don't have a counterspell in hand since they're on empty. So we can just recast it. And then just draw a card, I guess. And then if they draw an untapped land, they could play Bonny and give haste.
There is clarity at the center of every. Open your mind to
Otherwise, there's also the creature land. So they did find a land. Can play Bonny. But yeah, they're still going to be a little bit short of finishing off Ugin, and if we get to untap with it, we can still potentially deal with most of their board and take over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Tifa. Can't think of many worse matchups. A deck that can potentially win on turn 3 against a deck that doesn't have removal, although we actually drew Warping Wail, which can deal with Tifa, assuming it doesn't get any extra counters. So I guess we'll try it. And then we've got some powerful late game with Ultima into Ugin. For now, let's maybe Scry, although I know what I'm playing next turn, so I can maybe wait a turn on the Scry, just gain 2. Opponent runs out Tifa, I main phase need to remove it, because if they untap, we're in trouble. Even though I could maybe punish them for going for a pump spell, but the risk of that failing is pretty high. So a Relic I could keep, so next turn I could either play Relic or play Key Sacrifice, although I think I prefer going Relic into Ultima. Normally Key would go for our Monument, but Ultima does the same pretty much. So we're not dying on turn 3. That's good. Might take them an extra turn to redeploy Tifa, and wow, our opponent explodes. So yeah, we don't have much removal, but we drew it in the right matchup. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the combo of Tidus with Clive. So they're playing the partner pairing. Our hand's a little slow to get going. Just a Warping Wail, and then nothing till 6 mana. So I'll take a mulligan. This is a bit better. So turn to Ironcrag. Still kind of waiting for a 4 mana ramp card. Can also use the Gardens to maybe copy an artifact, but don't want to copy the legendary Ironcrag. Should have maybe waited to deploy Mutavault because it's holding priority now. Opponent rams the old-fashioned way with Rampant Growth. Would have been able to counter their sorcery with Warping Wail. And another expensive Eldrazi that I cannot cast. So not doing a whole lot. Could get in for 2. Not that it really matters, but sure. Can still Warping Wail regardless. And maybe I'm interested in just making the Scion for the 1 extra mana to deploy the Dreamstone. Well, this one's pretty tempting to counter, I'll be honest. Another 7+ mana card. Now I guess we'll make a treasure with Fountain Port. So I can get to 6 mana. Opponent cultivates. So all ramp spells so far. Possible this is some sort of Wilderness Reclamation deck with a bunch of counter spells, which can then also make use of Tidus' ability, which is good in conjunction with a lot of mana and some instant speed plays. Okay, so could try the Wandering. If our opponent does have a counter spell, I mean, both of these getting countered would hurt. But the Dreamstone getting countered would probably hurt more, since I also have to use my treasure. So we'll start here. And yep, classic counter spell. So no Wandering for me. Maybe next turn we'll get a Hedron. Now Vile Smasher. Opponent keeps up 4 mana. Yeah, I don't have high hopes for any of my spells resolving, so we'll give them a Hedron Archive, I guess. Commit. Deal 4. Could see them cast a Memory Half as well, and then I lose my entire hand. So yeah, it is a counterspell deck. Time Warp, take an extra turn, take 5 damage. They can still cast their Author Commander. And then they could untap, cast Memory. And we're not going to be very happy. And they're going to Muldrifter instead. Deals 5, despite being evoked. So then I'm taking another 3 down to 6. So if they have anything relevant left, we just die. But yeah, opponent had some pretty good blue interaction here, as it turns out. Key to the archive. Can also find a Time Warp if they're lucky. But yeah, there's some pretty good cards in here. Take my turn. Ulamog, not quite what we need here. So yeah, I seem dead on board. Could make another token with Fountain Port, but yeah, at this point it doesn't really make a difference. GG's. Opponent had a Lightning Bolt from the Key to the Archive. We're at 2, so our opponent can untap and attack for lethal. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a blue-green Merfolk deck or Explorer deck. Our hand is a little pricey. Yeah, need something to bridge the gap between nothing and Hadron, so I don't think I can keep. This one's better. Got the Mox Opal. Still need to enable Metalcraft, but turn to Silver Key. Can maybe get something useful. Now let's start here. If I sank the key, we're further from Metalcraft is a problem. An Iron Crag is a good card to kind of bridge the gap. So let's see if this resolves. Nope, opponent's gonna Memory Lapse. So then, no point in playing the Mox Opal either. But next turn I can replay Iron Crag. Maybe sack the Moonsilver Key to get something like our Monument. Alright, so our opponent's just a counterspell deck, it seems. So, could also try Mystic Forge or Warping the Vestige. Yeah, I guess Warping is fine, although we could Warp at a discount if I play Incubator first. So yeah, let's try that. Because with Mox Opal I would still have enough. Opponent's gonna Spiral in response. And then Serenade after all. Alright, that's too bad. So then now I can't do anything since we don't have Metalcraft enabled. It's 1 mana to sack the key, so could still do that, I suppose. Can do it at instant speed. And get a Monument. But then I'll need to draw lands in order to cast it. Alright. So still 2 mana left for counter spells, I'm sure. Yeah, I'll save the key. And then Citadel also good for Metalcraft. So, see if they deal with a Mox Opal. And that resolves. Now I can either cast or warp the Vestige. I guess I'll warp it, and then I can still put the Mystic Forge into play for free, basically. And I can sack the Moonsilver Key to search up our Monument. Opponent's going to counter the Iron Crag. That's fine. Put in Mystic Forge, which they weren't able to counter. And now we can start playing our colorless spells off the top, which is an easy way to beat all these counter spells. Deep Fathom Echo. Explores. Turns into a Biomancer. Is there an infinite combo here that I'm not seeing, perhaps? For now we can take 2. And Ugin should be pretty good here. So we've got a land on top. Could always get rid of it with a Mystic Forge. But yeah, simply casting Ugin lets me exile the Echo. And then if I make mana, can always tutor up something. And with the Moonsilver Key, maybe I do get rid of the land now. Can cast a Mirror, perfect. And we're in business. Protect Ugin. And then once I get my monument, it should be trivial to cast Emrakul, although we're getting close just by ramping up here. And Biomancer adapts. And discards Kiora. And Aerialist as our last card. So yeah, don't hit my spot. Should be very close to casting Emrakul. I think I actually get there if I just search up my monument here. And yeah, opponent's gonna scoop it up. Can make 3 mana with Ugin, which in conjunction with, let's say, the Mirror, makes 5 to cast monuments, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 mana. I guess I'm still 1 short of casting Emrakul after all. So I guess either way very close to casting Emrakul, and can at the very least play the Vestige, exile most of the opponent's stuff, and then next turn we should be able to Emrakul with ease. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing the Wandering Minstrel, so 5-color towns, perhaps. Our hand is pretty fair, all things considered. We can exile their commander with a Warping Wail. It that heralds can maybe soak up some attacks, but I don't think I can keep this. It's just not really working towards anything. This one's better. If we can get the monument down, that's a way to eventually cast Emrakul and the other various Eldrazi titans. Okay, maybe wait on Eldrazi Temple. Keep that as a surprise. Turn to Minstrel. So don't have any plays on 2. But on turn 3, we can play the Talisman at least. Opponent's gonna ramp with Cultivate. So yeah, once they build up their mana and get multiple towns online, we could be taking a lot of damage. Make sure to gain 1 life with a Talisman. And next turn I could already go for Monument, although the Ice Still Explorer is pretty scary, especially if they have a fetch lane to go with it. Cross my fingers they're not a Strip Mine deck. Planar Genesis, so they need a few more colors to enable the Minstrel, but I'm sure they'll eventually get there. So we'll cancel out the 1 damage. And yeah, I think we go for it here. Play Monument, cross our fingers that it doesn't get removed, and then next turn we're gonna make a lot of progress towards casting Emrakul. Settle the Wilds keeps on ramping. Currently still only one town on the battlefield. Now spelunking. A lance will enter untapped. And they milled Celestial Colonnade, so a pretty powerful creature land. Alright, a Warping Whale can counter sorceries. So this turn I can play Archive. Copy it with Sculpting Steel, because Monument is legendary. Opponent's gonna mana drain. Cannot Warping Whale back, only counter sorceries. So yeah, that's a setback. Can still maybe resolve Karn. And then plus... see what they decide to give us. It's gonna be a land. Can either surveil or eventually search up an Eldrazi. And we get to surveil. And a Sire could be a decent roadblock. For now, copy Talisman. And then I could Warping Whale the Minstrel. Does that really matter when they don't have 5 towns in play? Yeah, with only 1 town, we're not even taking a lot of damage next turn. So we can pass, keep Warping Whale up at instant speed thanks to the extra mana from Talisman and Monument. But yeah, if they've got some big Curve Topper, we could just die. Gotta hope it's a sorcery. So activate Nykthos. 6 mana floating, activate Colonnade. And then activate Minstrel. So I could now respond with Warping Whale on Minstrel. Seems better than just making a token, unless the token gets me to Emrakul. So we have 6 lands next turn, that's 12 mana. Plus 4. So I guess I get there regardless. So sure, we'll deal with the Minstrel. I imagine Karn's gonna die here. Emrakul is uncounterable, so they would need something very specific to stop it. And then Eldrazi Temple also gives us a small mana boost. Our opponent does have a lot of lands they can sacrifice to the Annihilator trigger. But we'll start with an attack. That looks a little bit cleaner. Take 17. Could also exile their graveyard with Scavenger Grounds to make the Explorer less effective. Could also draw with Arch, so we have a couple options here. Probably want to cast another Eldrazi. And then still have a bunch of mana left. So let's say I want to draw with Arch, then I can still use Scavenger Grounds afterwards. Alright. Can also sack the Pylons actually, since it's also a desert. Exile all graveyards. And that looks better. Pass the turn. Opponent's gonna Swords the Sire, falling to 1 in the process. Emrakul with protection from spells that are 1 or more colors, so they couldn't target it with Swords to Plowshares here. Is a Traveling Chocobo gonna defeat Magic's most powerful creature? It is not. Alright, so we get to see this colorless Eldrazi ramp deck in action, and yeah, choosing Emrakul as your commander is the ultimate power move. Of course, there will be games where you never get to 50 mana, so then you would rather have a cheaper Eldrazi in the command zone, but that can easily be swapped around, so if you get bored of one Eldrazi, you can play a different one, and the deck will mostly remain the same. There might be some small synergies here and there that you can adjust, but for the most part, you just want to make as much mana as possible, as quickly as possible, and then start slamming down your legends. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.